2003, that second crisis, this magical world that opened through the writing. I was being lifted up, and when I was here, I would feel comfort. The agony of flashbacks, moving to comfort. I felt safe there. I felt held in love. I felt I could rest. You have no idea how much I needed to rest. I was able to play and laugh and cry and giggle like a little kid being held. While this was happening, I felt in me a loving presence, soothing, calming. This presence had no gender, no sound that could indicate gender, no shape that could say it looks like a person or like an animal or like anything. Nothing. It was just a very, very gentle energy field. And when I saw that this whole situation was bringing me out of here, I decided to call this presence in me God. A very controversial word. Every person gives those three letters a different meaning. Some hate God, some love God, some say God doesn't exist. Everybody has their own meaning to that word. I give it many different meanings, so this loving presence was one of those ways. I realized this writing is not just for me. This writing is to be shared with the world, because the world needs to be lifted out from their suffering. The world needs to be comforted. The world needs to feel safe. The world needs to be seen and understood and accepted and not judged as I did. The world needs to rest. The world needs to cry and laugh and play and giggle like a little kid in loving arms. So you may remember this question, this silent scream that I had. What does God want from me? I had the answer. I was supposed to write a book about all these conversations and all about this healing that was happening. And I had to write the book and give it to the world. I was supposed to write a book about all these conversations and all about this healing that was happening. And I had to write the book and give it to the world. Okay? Now, at that point in my life, I was a mess. My life was a mess. I was in the middle of that ordeal with the church that lasted for years. That scream for justice was there. So I had given up that job. Freelancing as a church musician doesn't pay a lot. I had a concussion from a car accident. I had just taken my mother to the nursing home, which was the most heartbreaking decision I had to make. I knew I could not keep my house. I had to find a place to move to. I had to prepare the house, etc. And I had to write a book and publish it. And I had no idea of how I was going to do that. 2 years later, 2005, I had bounced back. I had sold a house. I had bought a condo. I had found a job that was stable. My mother was transferred to a better nursing home. And I produced my show, God on the Back Burner, Call of the Broken Heart. It was the first time that I would show what I had in me to an audience. My conversations with God were there, intertwined with music. This happened at St. John the Evangelist Church in Beverly. I was music director there, and the church choir sang in between conversations with God. We had timpani and brass, and I was playing and singing and directing the choir and acting and having conversations with God, who was an interfaith minister, Reverend Joel Grossman, whom I had met at the nursing home through hospice, because my mother was in and out of hospice for 8 years. That was the beginning of these creative works starting to pop out of me, one after the other. I couldn't stop. I was in labor for 7 years. So God on the Back Burner was the first baby. And I produced my show, God on the Back Burner, Call of the Broken Heart. It was the first time that I would show what I had in me to an audience. My conversations with God were there. It was really scary to make myself so vulnerable. And Stuart, my therapist, told me that by showing, talking about my pain, making it public, I was giving permission to others to do the same. And the truth is that revealing the secret of who I am, telling the story, is a huge piece of healing. And telling my story, or for anyone, as scary as it can be, it can start in little bits. You can talk to a friend, you can talk to a therapist, you can talk to God, you can, or angels, or whoever, or animals, your pet, your stuffed animals. You can write a little bit and then throw it away, burn it, shred it so nobody knows. But telling the story, speaking up your truth the way I'm doing right now in front of a camera, it doesn't need to be to this extreme. It starts in little steps, and then you go in the direction that works for you. In 2006, 7, and 8, my first 3 books, the first 3 books of the flashback series, were self-published. Every book is like a chapter of my life. And after I would finish a book and self-publish it, it was out of my system. Memories, intrusive memories and flashbacks that used to come all the time stopped coming. I tell you, journal writing is a powerful tool. Whether it ends up in a book or not, it doesn't matter. So these first 3 books, when they came out of me, that's it, moving on to the next. However, in 2008, after I self-published the 3rd one, which is The Immigrant / The Refugee, there were a few pages that I could tell separated themselves from the rest. And those few pages were flashbacks of military violence in Argentina. And so one day after that book had been self-published, I'm walking down the street, and all of a sudden, there's a movie playing in my head. And this was not a movie I had watched or viewed. This was my own movie, okay? It was going on and on and on in circles, repeating over and over the same thing. Those flashbacks had come back, but they were not flashbacks, were content for this movie that was coming to me. I told you, things just come to me. It was coming with music that I had written 10 years earlier. And this music was, these different pieces were the exact mood that I needed for this movie. And this movie was coming with images from my books, my little illustrations, my sketches, and there were new images that were coming that I was supposed to make. It was coming with sound effects, with narrative, and I had no idea of what am I going to do with this. How am I going to get this out of my head? It was not easy. It was not easy. Eventually, I landed here in Bevcam, and they helped me. They helped me, and I am just so very grateful for their help. So here, the film Over the Mass Grave, God Among Us was produced. The film Over the Mass Grave, God Among Us, like most of my creative works, carries symbolism. Part of that symbolism points at the importance of balancing the yin and yang. The yin and yang are the feminine and masculine energies that every single human being carries within them. The yin is nurturing, compassionate, gentle. The yang is forceful, assertive, aggressive. Those two energies need to balance one another. They are not supposed to be against each other. They are supposed to be dancing. When there's not enough of one or the other, an imbalance takes place in society. Right now, not enough yin is there in the world. Not enough nurturing, gentleness, compassion. When there's not enough of that, the yang energy results in atrocities and cruelty. So one way of contributing to a better society is becoming aware of that imbalance in oneself and choose to bring it together, to align those two energies. Over the Mass Grave has a fragment of a musical production by my father called The City of Tomorrow. The city of tomorrow is the city of love, the city of light. Right now on the planet, there is a global movement, a global community holding the vision of a new earth. That vision has existed for a very, very long time, and its manifestation seems to be getting closer. So now is a time for people to choose in which direction they want to go. Towards a new earth, the vision of the new earth, or do they want to stay in the world of the news? Making no choice is a choice in and of itself. Getting back to Over the Mass Grave, the city of tomorrow, which was written, produced over 3 decades ago, opens the gate to the energy of the new earth. When that edition was made on this film, all of a sudden I realized that here I had my father's music next to mine, my father's mysticism next to mine, and we were meeting there. The best of him, the best of me were coming together. The relationship with my parents was very, very difficult, very painful, very complex. They were both brilliant, very gifted, very good heart, very generous, and very wounded, because that's what being human means for most of us. We are all imperfect. In the flashback series, which is 7 books of that series, there is a thread, one of many threads, which is the relationship with my mother. Is working through it, is healing it. So that 7-book series holds a big portion of my healing that relationship. I write some about my father there, but I couldn't really go into it because it was so painful. So I thought this will remain in me as unfinished business. I will never find closure. However, when his production came into this film Over the Mass Grave, and there was that alignment of the best of both of us, all of a sudden this messy father-daughter relationship wasn't so important anymore. This here, through the film, had created a space for healing. A holistic doctor told me once that I had to meet my father, to connect to my father in my own terms. And that's how it happened. I never planned on it. It just happened. One thing led to the other to come to this realization. And that is one of the many moments that I called magical. For me, life is magical, full of synchronicities. I don't call them coincidences. For me, there's nothing is a coincidence. There are synchronicities that have led my life from one step to another, ending up in healing. Alice Warren from Gloucester wrote about Over the Mass Grave. She says, "Over the mass grave, God among us, touched my heart deeply. I wept and instantly felt especially grateful to be an American who lives in America. It reminded me of our precious freedoms here, freedoms that so much of the world, unfortunately, does not share. What a statement it makes for the dire necessity for people to be able to immigrate." Over the Mass Grave addresses so many fundamental human rights and needs. The topics are both timely and universal: wars, dictatorships, post-traumatic stress disorder, immigration conflicts, spirituality, etc. God bless Jay-Z, and God bless all of her efforts. Jay-Z was my nickname for a few years. I'm back to my real name now, Georgelina.